Welcome everyone, Christine here with the discussion about the Total War Saga Troy Mythos and why it has failed. Yes, failed. The Steam charts don't paint a pretty picture about the state of this game. Player activity has plummeted significantly, and not that it ever went anywhere. Because quite frankly, Mythos is a disappointment. I mean, I was pretty excited when they first started showing trailers, when they were talking about it. It's like, oh, is this actually going to be the redemption of a Total War Saga Troy? Something I had hoped for, because I really liked this period. I grew up reading the Iliad, the Aeneid, the Odyssey, all those books, all those legends, the Greek mythology in general. So actually seeing a Total War game in this period was very exciting. Then it came out and it ended up being boring. And with Mythos, it was, oh, they're adding Mythic units. It's going to be a lot better. But the game, I also felt that the game also needed a major overhaul in terms of balancing, design, how the various factions work. And we didn't get that. And that's the major flaw that exists with the Total War Saga Troy Mythos. That sure, we got some new models and skins for Mythic units, and we got some new Mythic units, and we got Mythic expeditions for, say, the Archgriffin in this particular case. We did get all of that, absolutely. We absolutely got all of that, but it doesn't change the fundamentals of the game, especially in the way Mythic units are done. So what they did, because we have a limited selection of Mythic units, what they did is, oh, every capital, or many of the capitals, you can recruit one type of Mythic unit. So Sparta gets centaurs, Argos gets giants, Mycenae gets centaurs, and so on. Ithaca, I guess, gets sirens, right? So you get one Mythic unit type, regardless of which faction you're playing as. And that's how you add Mythic units. But what happens when the Mythic unit type that you have is damn near useless? Centaurs aren't a great unit, quite bloody, frankly, and you have better things to do with your capital. You have actual units that aren't limited in numbers that you want to use. You have structures for growth. You have happiness for spies. You have sanctuaries, all that. You have limited slots, and there are more important things to use than the Mythic unit structure that you get there. So that's one of the first things, that they added a bunch of new models, they added the hunting expeditions, they added a bunch of new units actually with each of these types, like the Archgriffin, the Cerberus, the Hydra. But all of that is difficult to acquire. That's like late game stuff. Now they kind of like band-aided it with the capital recruitment stuff, and by having free armies spawn in your capital region that can destroy to get some Mythic units. So in the case of Sinnelleos here, he has a Centaur Warrior unit. I believe he starts with this actually. A Hydra Priest, a Lesser Griffin, and I can also get a Spear Masters of Elysium. So that I can have 4 out of 20 of my units could be Mythic units. Now consider Sinnelleos' situation. The only Mythic unit I can get in my natural expansion path is actually from Sparta, the Centaurs. That's it. And as I said, the Centaurs aren't the greatest. Outside of that, yeah, I have some buildings here in some of the settlements that you conquer, like in Knossos and in Kisamas. You have some buildings that can give you benefits to Mythic units. But the Corybantes, they're a Hera unit. The Minotaur is a Zeus unit. So you need to worship them, and worship them to a high level in order to actually get those units to be unlocked. And the thing is, you don't want to do that because of the way they did the gods. So they slapped a bunch of stuff on top of the existing campaign structure and gameplay structure, but they didn't fix the issue. So for instance, with the gods, all they did, really, like, based on what I can say, is like, yeah, sure, maybe some of the gods got some rebalancing and all that, but like, say Aphrodite, the only change that you got to Mythos is, oh, you can now use Disarming Beauty if you celebrate her, respect her, or worship her, right? You can use it several times within a battle. And that's it. That's really it. The other effects are exactly the same. Like with Zeus, sure, the Thunderbolt has does have an impact in battles, But the growth and happiness that Aphrodite gives you is completely imbalanced and makes her the best god to worship for most of the game. And hell, even if you're not thinking of Aphrodite, you may want to worship Hephaestus because he gives you benefit to gold and bronze production, which is a pretty big deal since some of your best units require bronze and gold and require bronze upkeep. So some gods are better than others. The way they've done mythic units is in a fairly limited way that you can't really fully appreciate them. The mythic expedition results in a very difficult battle that's like an endgame 40 stack unit battle that requires at least a tier 3, full tier 3 army, more like a tier 4, tier 5 army in order to win with a high level hero. Or high-level faction leader, which I don't really have right now. I'm not sure I could take this. I'm absolutely certain that if I took this army and threw it against the end battle of the Mythic Expedition, I might win, but I'd be certainly bloodied. And the Mythic Expeditions themselves cost a lot of resources. So they added a number of things, but the way they added them was in a pretty poor way, where they didn't take advantage of it. And so you get all these Mythic units, and you get all these new mechanics, and then it's like, none of it really matters. The campaign structure, the way the campaign plays is the same. You get these two massive coalitions, and I do have to say, the baseline of Troy Total War is fine. It's not horrible. It's not broken. It's just boring. The campaign is boring. It's not horrible. I do appreciate the fact that you get this campaign structure where it's just like these two massive coalitions, the Chians versus Trojans, duking it out against each other. That does happen. That did happen beforehand. The problem is, the battles in this game are pretty dull. The campaign mechanics are fine, but there's also a lack of missing features. That's one of the problems of a Total War Saga Troy. Did they fix that? No. Did they fix other issues of imbalancing the campaign? No. Did they fix issues of difficulty on that? No. So they didn't fix many of the issues, and in a big way with the Total War Saga Troy, what it fell to the base game, which hasn't been fixed with Mythos, is that they were taking features away that you would have as any faction in a previous Total War game, and just saying, oh, this is what the special feature of one faction or another. So for instance, Agamemnon is the only guy who can have vassals, right? And he also has positions in the king's court because he's the king of men. As Menelaus, who I'm playing as, well, Menelaus may actually be the strongest faction, or could very well get the strongest army. Why is that? Because you have global recruitment, so you can recruit anywhere across the map. I'll actually show this with my hero here. So you can recruit, you have your regular recruitment here, local recruitment, and then you can have call to arms, which is global recruitment. But global recruitment and, say, vassalization are things that every faction used to have in a Total War game. Now it's like, oh, only these factions have one of these. Now, of course, with global recruitment, what they did is they added a bit of a twist to Menelaus in that he can recruit unit types from his allies. So, for instance, I can recruit Havoc Javelins from Achilles via. I can recruit Island Club Warriors from Ithaca. I can recruit Bowmen from Nestor, from Pallas, and so on. So I can recruit these unit types so I can have a very strong and versatile army, and that is the twist. But otherwise, Menelaus, he may have a very powerful army, but he's a very bland faction, and this game certainly feels very bland. Even if I fight a battle here, and to be clear, very rarely there's a lot of battles that you can easily skip in this game. And the reason you can skip them is because, well, the battles themselves are nothing particularly fun to play through. The performance of them is actually not good at all. Like, this isn't even max settings. This is far from max settings. And I could play other Total War games better, so the performance optimization of the game isn't the best in the world to begin with. I do say I have to appreciate the landing feature on flying units here in this game, because it used to be a pretty big issue. But even so, right? Let's take this battle. What am I gonna do? How do I win this particular battle? Well, I'm just gonna take my units and smash them against their entire army, and I'm gonna take my skirmishers and slingers and so on, and Menelaus himself, and I'm just gonna smash against their army. If it's an open field battle, then you just make a formation of 2 free lines at most. Maybe you corner camp, maybe you don't. But either way, you make a very simple formation. You don't use any complicated tactics, and generally battles are, like, very rarely are battles going to be fought where the outcome isn't already predetermined. Most of the time you will win unless the enemy horribly outnumbers you or has significantly better units than you. So the battles themselves, because they're largely a foregone conclusion, well, that's one issue that Total War has had for a long time, that actually playing the battles is more of a sideshow to the actual main event. Or if you have to play a battle, it's because you're horribly outnumbered or unmatched, and higher difficulties in, say, Warhammer, for instance, will certainly make it so you have to fight a lot of battles just because the enemy will outnumber you because of all the campaign advantages the enemy is going to get. But that's not really interesting. Like, you're just fighting a lot of battles, continuous battles, where the stakes are not really that important, honestly. And that just kind of ruins the purpose of the game. I think there is a reason why every single Total War game, including Free Kingdoms, has failed ever since Warhammer 1 has come out, because they keep trying to, like, replicate the success they had with Warhammer 1. And yet the problem is that they can't, because the things that make Warhammer, Total War Warhammer work are specific to that universe. You can't just replicate them in another game, and you can't have this mix and match between history and fantasy that they've been trying to do as of late. I'm actually glad that they abandoned that with Mythos, but the damage to this game had long been done with their initial launch of the game, and the fact that they put in too few resources.
Ready for action.
So yeah, right here I'm just gonna take my spear units supported by my javelin, and I'll just march across the battlefield. And the only reason I'm really fighting this battle to begin with isn't because I'm gonna enjoy the gameplay here. No, the gameplay is pretty boring and stale and dull, and Myth units don't change that. I have a Griffin here, it's not doing anything. Oh, I have a Hydra Priest, he can cast some magic, woohoo! So I can play battles in Troy that are half as interesting as the battles in Warhammer 2. And mind you, the battles in Warhammer 2 have a lot of issues to begin with. It's not like, oh, they're the pinnacle of battles in Total War. They aren't. There are much better strategy games where the moment-to-moment gameplay is significantly more interesting than Troy. Like, if we want to look at the game where you can command massive armies, think of Bannerlord, for instance. That has a lot of stakes in battles. Tactics actually matter. You can't just win by, oh, I'm going to take my entire army, and because I built it in the right way, I'm going to be able to smash the opposing side with ease. No, that's not how Bannerlord works at all.
Combat ready. Destroy the
Or because in this case my units are so experienced. Sure, an experienced army of Bannerlord will crush the enemy, but you also need to be careful sometimes. You can't just Zerg rush everything. I mean, Bannerlord isn't perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly a heck of a lot more engaging than this. So the front line, so the enemy front line has been broken. Like, genuinely, this isn't even a siege. This is like a minor settlement battle. I certainly hope the ones in Warhammer 3 are not going to be like this. I'm actually glad that they've delayed Warhammer 3, because some people are mentioning it's like Warhammer 2 had a rough launch and they should avoid that with Warhammer 3. Yeah, they should. They have a lot of work to make that game work properly, but it is encouraging that they delayed it. But I'm just thinking to myself, what is the future of Total War? Is it just Warhammer? Okay, so you release Warhammer 3. What are you going to do then? Warhammer 4? Because your historical games haven't been doing as well as of like Creative Assembly. They need to change their battle design completely. They can't just keep doing the things that they've been doing for years. Like, even Warhammer, Like, the problem is with Warhammer, even with Warhammer, yeah, they added magic and giant units and all that stuff that Warhammer brings, but they haven't changed fundamentally the way battles work, and they should do that. They should learn from games like Ultimate General in terms of how battles should be. Because those battles are very similar on a superficial level, but they're a lot more interesting. Also, they really should improve the performance of large-scale battles. If simulators like Ultimate Battle Simulator can have 1 million men, Ultimate Battle Simulator 2 can have 1 million men on the screen, don't tell me that, and run decently well, then I really don't accept the argument that, oh, but it's proprietary technology. Okay, there are games made by other studios that have 100,000 men and run better than this. This is not because of the graphics, by the way. It might be because of the unit size I have, sure. I do have a larger unit size. There's an even larger one available.
Justice.
Or it might just be because they need to change how they handle battles, they need to change how their design is, how the decision making is. I mean, to be fair, Troy was a step in the right direction, but like with Free Kingdoms, actually even worse than Free Kingdoms, because Free Kingdoms had a bigger budget so they could do more, but like with Free Kingdoms, it failed because you can't just have it all in the game. And it's like, Mythos was a step in the right direction, but it also was a step in the wrong direction because, like, oh, we're gonna have a historical mode. Okay, how do you balance all of those? Well, you don't, clearly. You obviously don't. Or the implementation of mechanics of each mode is done in such a piss poor way that it ruins the overall purpose of it. Like with Myth units in the Mythos system. And keep in mind, Mythos costs money. Like, it's like, oh, is Mythos worth buying? No. I was really hoping it would be, honestly. Like, I really was. I was rooting for this game. But it should tell you something that every major Total War channel, and there's a lot of them, are like, we're not covering this game. Like, they decided this a long time ago, or even those that have covered this game haven't really haven't really done any content right now that Mythos has come out. Or very few of them have done it. That is pretty telling over the state of the game. So right here, my X-Men are just pushing forward into the enemy spearmen. And Menelaus is dug in there. I also think one of the issues that Total War has, and especially important in a game like Troy, is there's not enough emphasis on storytelling, which is a pretty big deal in a game like this, or a period like Free Kingdoms, or something like Free Kingdoms. You need to have the characters with a good story behind it. You need to be able to tell that story in a compelling way. Not just like, oh, text on a screen and some choices that you can make, very few of which have any actual relevance except the campaign stat. That's all. It's like the consequences of your decision. Oh, you get a different bonus depending on what you pick. Very few actual consequences for the most part. There are some relevant consequences for a few decisions, but that's really the exception. But really, for all intents and purposes with Mythos, you might as well just play the historical mode. Believe it or not, you wouldn't feel like it was. You wouldn't feel that it would be so horrible. You wouldn't feel the loss would be so great. So was pushing there. Gonna take that lesser griffin.
Axes! Wipe them out!
Now they still have a bunch of units over here, so I still have quite a bit of fighting ahead of me, but
To glory!
if they keep breaking like this, then there's no point, really. I'm gonna move that Hydra Priest ahead.
Axes! For the Achaeans! Axes! Menelaus! Axes! Attack! Slingers ready! Trains and
Now they're stuck in with a few units right there.
Axes! Foes beware! Warriors of the Hydra!
I'm gonna send the centaurs in.
Combat ready! Menelaus! As you say.
The only thing that's holding me back here is that 20-minute timer, really.
Ready!
That's my only concern right now. I'm gonna take my spearmen and move them to
No mercy!
two-handed spear mode.
Menelaus!
This was Creative Assembly's idea. It's like, oh, we want to make an infantry-focused game, but infantry has sucked in Total War for a long, long time now. Like even in Rome 1, it's like even going as far back as Rome 1. If you're telling me infantry was the mainstay of Rome 1, no. Okay, that lesser griffin is gonna get its head chopped off if I just keep pushing. If I just keep it there, I need to pull it back.
Axes! Spears! Destroy the foe! Take
And Menelaus is going there to smash some fools. I'm gonna send a lesser griffin actually there and kill the griffin if I can.
to glory! Sons of Achaea! Axes! Spears! Advancement!
10 minutes there.
Axes! Train and ready!
Let's engage with those axemen, send them over there. Kill the griffin.
Unleash the Hydra's power!
Now I could have made this battle easier for myself if I had attacked on two fronts. Imagine, a battle can be easier if you attack from multiple entrances.
Spears!
Really complicated art of war over here, I gotta say.
Masters of war! Strike hard! No mercy! Onward, warriors! Spears! Strike hard! For the Achaeans! Attack! Blood of Fletcher! I will! Foes, beware! Dripping with venom! Don't hold back! Hydra! We're leaving while we can! Menelaus! Ready! Spears! On the move! Hydra!
And the Hydra priest over there.
Axes! Justice! Divine strength! For the Achaeans! Wipe them out! Pushing forwards! Spears! Go at them!
Alright, those fellows are broken.
Spears! Forward march! prevails! Unstoppable might!
Destroy the Trojan!
Axes! At your command!
Trained and ready!
Destroy the foe! Wreak havoc! Hydra beast!
All right, so I'm just gonna speed this up.
warriors are losing heart. Your warriors have been routed.
All right, and those heavy axe warriors are gonna break. And use poison there. Look at the massive blob of units surrounding him.
By Ares, your warriors are rallying.
And that's victory. But not really a compelling battle. The only thing... this is a problem, by the way. Battles are just a fucking time sink that aren't interesting, compelling, or even really that important. I could have just waited a couple of extra turns and the battle... Like, I could have waited a couple of extra turns and just starved them out. That's all I gained, really, by fighting this battle directly here.
Hard work pays off.
And now I can get giants.
Menelaus of Sparta.
And that's all to it, really. Those are my thoughts on the subject. I'm sure people will disagree. People always disagree. It's like, oh, you're being too harsh to it. It's like, yeah, the game has failed. Its sales numbers are not as good as they could be. And honestly, I'm starting to think with Mythos that it was just an attempt at the cash grab by Creative Assembly and Sega to just sell copies of the game, knowing that to try and fool people into paying money for Mythos or the Steam version in general, just fooling people to buy the Steam version because they knew, like, if they hadn't done nothing, no one would have purchased it. There's truth in that argument, absolutely. But like, even with all these armies, like, you might think, oh, there's all these armies, there's so many battles ahead. Even with all of that, this is not gonna be interesting. Believe it or not, like, when I look at these armies, I'm just frustrated. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to fight, what, 20, 40, 60, 70, 70, more like 80, 80 units with 20 units, if even that, because I can avoid it. I can fight defensive battle. I can just dig my heels in. And like, if they all attack me here, but yeah, if they all decide to do that, then I'll win easily. That's not even a question. I'll just dig in behind walls and run the clock, or just wipe the floor with them. The only threat is Paris. There's a lot of problems with the AI and its logic. The island hopping. The Total War AI has never ever handled going across the sea well. Ever in the history of the series has the AI ever handled going across the sea well. Not in Rome 1, not in Medieval 2, not in Empire, not in Napoleon, not in Warhammer. What was Creative Assembly, or what were they thinking? It's like, oh, we're gonna make a game about the Trojan War. Okay, where was the Trojan War fought? Mostly here, and outlying towns and villages. Not here. Not across the fucking islands of the Aegean. Of the Mediterranean, sorry. Not across Crete and all that. No, it was fought here. What they should have done is they should have made a campaign map focused on Troy, right? with settlements near Troy, Greek encampments, the Greek expedition. Like, if they had just taken this portion of Anatolia and Thrace and maybe a couple of islands, but not so many islands that the great battles end up being fought there. In reality, they don't even end up being fought there. One faction usually gains dominance over the seas. The faction and then strikes the other. Either Mycenae gets overrun by the Trojans, or the Trojans get overrun by the Greeks. Or more likely, if you don't get involved as a player, the war is a bloody stalemate. Neither side wins because, again, the AI cannot handle fighting at sea. I mean, for the record, they will at least send armies across the sea to fight against you, but it's never worked very well. The AI has a really bad habit. For instance, Paris right here is in full speed. His units are under attrition. So are the Dardanian stacks here. So they're taking unnecessary damage. So is the army of the Amazons over here. They've taken damage to get they're taking damage to get their armies across the sea. Yeah, Fenicelia here again, because deep sea attrition is a fucking thing. But does the AI care about that? No, it doesn't care about that. So, you want to talk about one major issue with this game? Yeah, that's one major issue. This series is renowned, if you've played it, for the piss-poor AI decision-making in terms of strategy, especially at sea. So, what do? Oh, they make a game where many of where the campaigns have to be fought over sea territory, because instead of making the reasonable thing and making, the Trojan War about Troy, with the Troy as the primary battlefront, the front line, it would be interesting actually if they were respecting, say, the Iliad. Yeah, sure, the Greek ships gathered in Boeotia and all that kind of stuff, but the main conflict, what was taking place, like there was a Greek encampment close to Troy, and then you had Troy, and the battles, the critical ones, were being fought there in the Iliad. Then, of course, you had all the outlying settlements that the Greeks had raided, all that, Briseis, how she was captured, and or other people were captured. That's what they should have done by default, by the way, instead of this nonsense. Hey, it's nice to have proper Greek mech in a way. Proper. Seeing Corinth as a village is pretty painful, I admit. But either way, there's a lot of questionable decisions. Like, this is a questionable decision. Why make such a massive campaign map? Because what that means is, instead of fighting Trojans as the Achaeans, or fighting Greeks as the Trojans, you'll just end up fighting a slew of minor factions that have no relevance to the major conflict. And sure, you will have some battles against the opposing side, but you're actually far better off avoiding them the best of your abilities, of conquering as many of the minor factions as you can, taking as much territory and land and resources as you can. So yeah, Costin here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.